Hull, Director of the Center for South Asian Studies. So welcome to the Summer in South Asia Symposium. This program is the product of the vision of a very generous person who was moved by his own first encounter with India and understands how valuable such experiences are in the lives of young people, whatever path they strike out later on. Reading the reports of all the students who went on this program this year, I was impressed by their dedication, resourcefulness, and curiosity. I find myself wondering what fruit these experiences will bear in your futures. But today I'm looking forward to hearing more about your work and the insights that they generated. Among the many great things the center does, this program is close to my heart because my own first engagement with India was through a similar program when I was in college. As a kid from rural New Hampshire, I'd never been south or west of New Jersey before that, much less out of the country, unless you count Canada. I can easily relate to the disquieting ride from the Varanasi airport that Talia describes in her report. I only wish I'd been half as diligent as all of you. We are all eager to hear the presentation, so I won't talk much more. In a moment, I'll turn the podium over to Janelle Fossler, who runs this program. But before I do, I'd like to thank Janelle for her tireless and creative efforts to make this program what it is. As those of you who've been on this program know, she does everything from beat the bushes for interested students to helping them develop their programs creatively and to supporting them in more practical aspects of life in and on the way to India. We are very grateful for her work. So I'm going to turn it over to Janelle. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Janelle Fossler and I'm the Fellowships Coordinator with the Center for South Asian Studies. This year I had the privilege of working with the Summer in South Asia Fellows, and when I say privilege, I really sincerely mean it. I learned so much from all of these students and they are truly inspirational. I cannot wait to see what they take on next because I truly believe that they can achieve anything they set their hearts and minds to. I'd also like to thank the anonymous donor of this program, who is not able to be here tonight, but his generosity makes this life-changing and transformational experience possible, not just for these fellows, but for 61 students total. And then lastly, I'd just like to thank Dr. Farina Mir and Dr. Matthew Hall, the directors of our center, for their hard work and dedication to this fellowship. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Ariana. Sorry, let me get my... Ariana Paredes Vincent is a sophomore majoring in international studies. She's interested in pursuing a career working in NGO settings and international development. Ariana interned with SETCO Foundation in Colloquium. SETCO Foundation strives to ensure that all women and children in the community have full access to healthcare, nutrition, education, and opportunity for growth. Her research focused on the impact of SETCO's livelihood trainings and the effect they had on empowering women participants. So I'll turn it over to Ariana.
Hi, my name is Ariana Paredes Vincent, and I went to Kalol, India, and I conducted a study on women's empowerment with a nonprofit called SETCO Foundation. So I'm a sophomore in LS&A studying international studies with a concentration in global health and the environment. And I'd like to go into global public health, particularly program evaluation. So what originally drew me to applying to Summer in South Asia Fellowship is originally I'm so interested in research, so that was an amazing opportunity for me, and I really wanted to get more involved in that on an international scale. And I really wanted to get the opportunity to work on a nonprofit setting and see what it was like to work in a community where there were problems within women's rights and how the nonprofits deal with that and work with that within the community. And I really wanted to get an evaluation experience because that's what I want to go into. So that was really important for me in order to apply. That was a part of my original plan when I applied for the fellowship. And I really wanted to go to India, of course. It's the most amazing country. It's so unique. There's no country like it, and I'm so happy that I was able to go. There's always different learning experiences. It's a huge country. I suggest all of you guys apply and try to go to India if you can throughout your lives. And in terms of the independence, I wanted to go with a program that wasn't particularly with other students or with faculty. I loved how I was able to go by myself and immerse myself in the community and with a nonprofit, and so that was a huge aspect as well. I worked with a nonprofit organization called SETCO Foundation. It was in Gujarat, which is in the west of India, and it was in a small place called Kalol. I never saw any other Americans while I was there, any other white people or any foreign people at all. And they had 3 primary focuses, which were primary education, health and nutrition, and women's empowerment. And in terms of primary education and health and nutrition, they had local anganwadis in 12 different villages, which were preschools, where they provided food every day for the children in the mornings, and education in preschool as well. And they provided health workers and teachers within these local anganwadis. And the program that I was part of, which was the women's empowerment aspect, they had skills trainings and entrepreneurship trainings that included mehendi, which is henna, and sewing, and beauty parlor classes. And then for those that were interested in creating a business, they had entrepreneurship trainings for the women as well. So for my study, my research objective was to find out whether or not the program did have an impact in empowering the women compared to women that hadn't undergone the training within these communities. And these are just pictures of me with the interviews, either in the local Anganwadi or in the women's homes with my interpreter. So in terms of my questionnaire, I had 5 different indicators that I used to measure women's empowerment, which were participation in household decision-making, self-esteem, financial autonomy, social network, and quality of life. And I was there for 6 weeks. So at the beginning, I was able to visit the local Anganwadis, learn more about the organization, and I was able to develop a survey questionnaire. And then throughout the rest of my time there, I was able to interview 45 different women. They were all older than 18 years old in 6 different villages. And for the baseline, which was women that hadn't undergone the program, it was 9. 20 of the women had undergone the skills training, and 16 had undergone the entrepreneurship training. So like I said before, it was questionnaire-based interviews in 6 different villages, but it was mostly in 2 villages where the trainings were conducted in Kalol, Katorsari, and SETCO Main. And we would either go to the local Anganwadis with a health worker who would bring the women to the local Anganwadi, or we would go to the women's houses. So for the results of my study, for the impact of the trainings, unfortunately, through my analysis, there was no impact, or there was no impact seen through the 5 indicators that I used between the women who hadn't undergone the training and the women that had. But when I asked the women directly whether or not they felt they had more confidence or if they had more decision-making within the home, there was some more smaller examples of improvements within these women. Some said they could buy things now, their families would allow them to go outside of the house and work. They had less restrictions, they were being consulted on things, and they felt really proud of the skills that they had learned. And the family members would a lot of times ask them like how to sew, or people from the village would go ask them, and they would make things for weddings and things like that. So it was a big confidence booster, even though there wasn't a huge impact within decision making and all of the things that I measured. Some other results were earning versus not earning. So a lot of the women did earn, even if it wasn't through the training. So there was a significant difference between the decision making of the women who earned compared to the women that didn't earn. And between married and single women, there was a significant difference as well, with married women scored higher in all of the empowerment indicators compared to single women. And in terms of the village differences between Katol, which was predominantly Hindu, and SETCO Main, which was predominantly Muslim, I'm not saying there's a direct correlation between religion and empowerment, but between my study there was an association. The women in Katol, which was a Hindu, had significantly higher differences in decision making compared to the predominantly Muslim population. And surprisingly for me, there was no relationship between family income and education and women's empowerment. So the higher the income, the more educated a woman was, did not mean that they had higher empowerment scores in any means in any of the indicators at all. So in this picture, the two women in the center were the two that had made successful businesses through the skills and entrepreneurship training. Out of the 90 who underwent the skills training and 25 who underwent the entrepreneurship training, these were the women who today currently have taken out loans. They have their own businesses. They have a steady income every month. So I was able to speak to them, and I asked them what they believed personally was necessary for success and what advice they would give to other women in the villages. And they said that it was really important that the family support the women, because without the family support, the women aren't allowed to go out. They aren't allowed to make their own decisions. So you can't empower a woman unless the family supports them and allows them to do those things. And also, Ashaban, which is the woman in the pink, she was a firm believer in education for all of the women. She was a big proponent. She was always working hard in the community to advocate for their children to get educated. And she believed that in order for women to have successful businesses and to be successful in earning money, they had to be passionate about what they were working for. It wasn't going to work if they were doing something that they didn't care about, because then they would end up just letting it go, or they wouldn't put as much effort into it. And in terms of advice, she believed that they needed to explain to the families the benefits that would come if the woman was earning, especially in terms of improving the family income, and then also explaining to the women how they would have increased respect, confidence, and more say in decision-making within the household once they earned. So of course, India was an amazing learning experience in every aspect, in every way. In terms of the development work, I thought that it was, in India particularly, it was really important for me to realize how hard it is to make a difference, especially within the work that I was working in, and I have more sympathy, and it's so hard for the women that were working in SETCO Foundation to make a difference in these communities. Without changing the core values and norms within the community, it's really hard to make a difference. You can't just give a woman money or teach a woman how to sew and expect them to change and the communities to accept them and love them more and give them more rights. It's really hard to change at the core, and I'm sure that's true for a lot of different places, not only in India. And in terms of the importance of external evaluation, it's really easy to get by to, if I am going to implement a program and I'm also the same person evaluating it, obviously there's going to be a lot of bias. So I realized the importance of having an external evaluator coming in, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what needs to change, and actually make an implementation plan and implement it within the nonprofit. In terms of personal learning experiences, flexibility was a huge thing on a day-to-day basis. Things never went as planned. I knew that going in, but it's always really difficult. And the independence, I love that there was no other people that spoke English there besides maybe 2 other interns. It really challenges you, and for me, the most challenging experiences are the ones where you learn the most. And going there alone, not knowing the language, having to learn about the culture, the norms, what's right, what's not right, and every day learning something new was extremely beneficial for me, and I hope that I can have an opportunity like that again. And in terms of professional experience, I learned so many research skills. I had to do literature review, survey development, I had to do the interviews. I learned a lot about how it is like to work with an interpreter. Data analysis, writing the report. It was all such a great learning experience that I know I'll use in the future, in future jobs or classes or things like that. And I just want to thank the donor. I know he's not here today, as well as Janelle and the Center for South Asian Studies. Without the donor, without the money, without the support, this opportunity would have never been possible. I would have never learned the things I learned. I would have never been able to go to India and work with a nonprofit and have all these experiences. And I wouldn't have realized how truly passionate I am about this and how I really want to go into this type of work. So yeah, I just want to thank them. And yeah, thank you so much. Oh, does anyone have any questions? Yes. Where did I stay? Sorry. He can ask again. Okay, I stayed, he asked where I stayed. I stayed at the guest house. The nonprofit had a guest house, so it was usually for people that came from Mumbai from the main office, but me and my interpreter and 2 other interns stayed with me there. Yeah. Yes, Morgan?
Did you have trouble adjusting to the food?
Yes. Well, so where I worked, it was actually a factory because it was called SETCO Automotive, which is the main company, and then SETCO Foundation, where I worked, they get 5% of the profits from the automotive company. So it's a factory, and all of the workers, hundreds of workers go there, and so it was the same food for all of us. It was very spicy, and that was really difficult, but you have to do it. It was fine. Thank you.
In both communities, because I know that you looked at 2, were single women in both communities seen? Did they have a lower baseline and a lower response to the training?
So the analysis was done for single women in all of them compared to married women. So overall, the married women had higher empowerment scores regardless of the village. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariana. Our next speaker is Sam Corey. He is a senior with a double major in political science and psychology. Sam interned with Nine Tower Community Services in Bangalore. Nine Tower is an NGO that provides financial literacy training and microfinance loans to empower community members. Sam's research explored the perception of microfinance institutions and also their ability to alleviate poverty in Bangalore.
Can you guys hear me fine? This is okay? Okay, I think I prefer it this way anyways. How's everyone doing? Oh, come on, like, how's everyone doing? That was so weak. Anybody? Come on, good. All right, okay, great. Thank you. All right. Oh, is this better? You want me to use this? Okay, I'll still use it. Make everybody happy. Okay, yeah, so my research project was what are the perceptions of microfinance in Bangalore and what was kind of its ability to alleviate poverty, or what did people think of it? Can I use this to move over? Yeah, okay, great. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, yeah, to start, I just want to thank everyone who made this happen. So the ghost who may or may not be in the room, the anonymous donor, Janelle, really appreciate everything for putting it all together. It was a long process, kind of, figuring out where to work, where to live, what to do, what to research, kind of the whole thing. It was a collaborative effort, and I want to personally thank Janelle. It was awesome. There were so many soft skills and hard skills that were learned. Really more soft, honestly. Really me as a person having to kind of be patient, to understand kind of not just the social norms of what was going on in Bangalore, but also transportation, logistical issues. Where's the bus stand? Like a lot of really hard things. And although a lot of people spoke English, particularly in Bangalore, people are really more comfortable with Kannada. It's kind of the native language. So people kind of go back to that. So it was really different. It was a different experience than I expected, and one that was very challenging. And I think I grew a lot from it. So, and also definitely some hard skills too. So, okay, so a little bit about me. So my name is Sam Corey. I'm a political science and psychology major and history minor. I'm a senior and I'm essentially looking to do some of the same things, I guess, that I did last summer. I'm looking to do, either a fellowship or scholarship, so I'm kind of on the Peace Corps Fulbright track, kind of do-gooder stuff, I guess. Hopefully in Southeast Asia, so I'll keep moving east. Yeah, it's a little bit about me. The program. So before before India was really on my radar, I lived in D.C. for a time. I actually did the Michigan and Washington program. If you have questions about it, you can ask me after. But in this experience, I got really interested in politics, and particularly in global affairs. I took a class in the Washington Post, and I took one on the Arab Spring, and it really kind of opened my perspective to the world. And I was really interested, and not just hearing about kind of the systems that were impacting people, but also I guess the narratives, really kind of hearing individual stories and how that related to kind of global phenomena and national trends. So through this, I really kind of realized my goal, which was, all right, I want to study certain places, and then I want to go experience it. Like, this is awesome. I want to delve into these narratives and really get at the heart of what's going on and what is really either giving people opportunities or stripping them away, and how does their kind of nation impact that. So I got the opportunity in an email through the political science department, and also in my India class, actually, my South Asia class. And I was like, well, I've been studying it. This is awesome. I'd love to go. And I seized it, applied, and it began. So the search to find out what I wanted to do started. That was probably the hardest part, because I had a lot of different interests, and so I was very open. But moving on, so this kind of pertains to that. So I was set to work at the Deccan Herald, which is a local Bangalore newspaper, and that didn't really work out. I got there the first day, and they're essentially like, yeah, we really don't have a whole lot of work for you. And me personally, like, when I get bored, I get anxious, I get, like, depressed. I feel like I have no meaning or purpose. So I was like, this is no good. Like, this is not okay. So I went back to my apartment that day. I got on the computer, and I was like, all right, I got to do some research. And one of the biggest things that I found was microfinance. And I worked with an organization that was kind of facilitating internships, and they helped me get in touch with Neurontura. And so essentially, they're a microfinance NGO really permeating Karnataka. Does anyone know what microfinance is? Okay, so a few hands. So essentially, microfinance is supposed to alleviate poverty and kind of increase the standard of living, and it's supposed to work on a local level. So the intent is because people who are poor or don't have access to banks, because they don't have that kind of access to capital, they're not able to grow whatever business that they want to. And so microfinance is a way for people to come into these communities of, I guess, lower socioeconomic status, provide a little bit of capital, educate them on what's going on, and how to use that capital, and to kind of help their business grow. And it's predominantly really used, or the loans are given to women, particularly because they're much more responsible with money. Just a note. So yeah, these are some of the facts with Neurontura. I worked in a small office. There was probably like 20 people there, and 2 good English speakers, and the rest was kind of broken. So I was really working to kind of delve into, where these people were from. I was trying to get to know them just like they were trying to get to know me. It was a lot harder for me, but I don't know. So it was interesting. So moving on, so I was really asked to do essentially what I always do, which is read and write. They gave me a lot of their information, all of their professional information, everything that they, I guess, advertised was in English, really. But the stuff with borrowers, everything within the office, and most things done in Karnataka was in Kannada, and maybe a little bit Hindi. So I worked on all of their English material, essentially. So I created a brochure, I created a newsletter, I looked over all their English documents and kind of corrected those. I created a financial literacy toolkit to really try to help these women borrowers understand the full value of their capital and kind of how it can go wrong in their hands if it's used unwisely. So that was a big thing. I guess one of the cooler things was I created a board game surrounding around financial literacy. It was a little bit rough, but I think they liked it. I don't know. I guess I'll have to email them soon to see if they're actually using it. But it was something they asked me to do. So moving on. So I got into this internship. I was kind of thrown into it. I didn't really know that much about microfinance going in other than kind of the goal and some of the good it has done. I started delving into a lot of the research, and I was a little bit horrified. A lot horrified. I'll scratch that. In a lot of places in Latin America and some places in India, there was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of scandals around microfinance. A lot of it had to do surrounding this one for-profit microfinance company that was just not really regulated enough. And that was kind of the big thing that I found. It was a lot, if you're interested in kind of, I guess, the dark side to microfinance, Hugh Sinclair is, I guess, the heretic who really exposed microfinance for a lot of its problems. Essentially what was happening was the borrowers were not regulated, and so they were either charging incredibly high interest rates that people could not pay back, or banks were not regulated, and so they essentially became loan sharks, which is really the opposite of what Muhammad Yunus, the founder, wanted. He really wanted to empower the poor, kind of give them some stability from all the shocks, environmental or otherwise, and the irony is it became what he wanted least, I guess, or what he was opposing. So for this, I passed out surveys around my apartment complex, just trying to get an understanding of what do people in Bangalore think of microfinance. And then what do they think about poverty, and do they think microfinance really does help alleviate poverty? Really, the main thing that I found was most people didn't know about microfinance at all. They really didn't know what it was. But they were pretty optimistic about poverty alleviation and thought that through education predominantly it could be eroded or eradicated. So I guess there was kind of a silver lining there. But there was definitely sample bias, I guess. That I had local friends help me pass out surveys, and we predominantly passed them out to males because they thought they would be more receptive to answering them. It was also in English, which most people spoke, but sometimes needed help kind of like translating a little bit. So some errors there. Yeah, so my experience overall, in the beginning there was a lot of culture shock, more than I had anticipated. Definitely had to do with like kind of specific relationships back home, but it was a very hard experience at first, but eventually I kind of made friends, got my work situation stabilized, and felt very confident. But I definitely had to learn to react kind of on my second emotional basis rather than my first. And I think a lot of times we do this, like our initial emotional reaction is rather harsh. It's kind of raw. It's not really understanding. But if you kind of step back for a second, things can get easier, and that's what happened. I traveled to a few different places. I went to Mysore and Nandi Hills in Pondicherry, specifically Oroville. Does anyone know of Oroville? Okay. Okay, yeah. So the people that know how awesome Oroville is. It's essentially a kibbutz, you could say, but it's more internationally focused. If you want to ask about it, I guess I can take the questions. I don't want to take up too much time. And then as far as my experience, I guess it's just an ode to a lot of the local friends and some of the foreign American friends that I made there. But Oroville is awesome, so I'll just say that. At the end, I kind of wrote, I don't know if I'd really say a poem, but just something brief about my thoughts of the place. Yeah, I wrote a lot. It really, I had a lot of passions for India, and I think they really materialized my blog. But this was some of the stuff that I wrote. So, yeah, I'll let you guys read it, but I'll keep moving. And then, you know, some of the biggest things that I learned, I kind of already harped on, but just definitely, you know, being patient, recognizing some of the different norms and then embracing them in full, and really understanding that, like, you know, most everyone there, I'm sure this isn't everywhere, and probably certainly not everywhere in India, but everyone was very friendly and, like, wanted to get to know me, wanted to know my story, you know, asking me why I was there, you know, like, what was my life like, you know, what did they want to learn, what did I want to gain, what have you. And so I really tried to reciprocate as much as I could, which was probably the best part, but that was definitely a big lesson. So, yeah, and that is it. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions?
I know that Bangalore is a place where there are a lot of companies that provide tech support for American companies. Did you come in contact with anybody who worked at those type of places?
You know, I didn't. I do know that's true. I was rather insulated as far as, like, my networks. They were even limiting within the office because I could only speak to so many people. And as far as my friends were concerned, they were about my age, so they, like, were entering the business world sort of, but they didn't quite get there. So I didn't really have access to a lot of that information. But I do know that's true.
Thank you, Sam. So our next speaker is Jamie Lutz. She is a senior majoring in architecture. Jamie plans to attend graduate school for urban planning with a focus on developing countries. Jamie interned with Human Wave, which is an NGO in Calcutta. Human Wave serves the local community in a variety of capacities, including community development projects, English medium schools for children, and English medium schools for children who reside in slums. Jamie's research focused on the similarities and differences between the informal settlements that Human Wave worked with.
So like Janelle said, I'm Jamie Lutz. I'm a senior in the architecture school, and I want to go into urban planning with a focus in international development for my master's degree and my career. So I was working with an NGO called Human Wave, which is in a small town called Mankundu, about 40 kilometers north of Kolkata in the east of India. And Human Wave is involved in a lot of different projects, all related to improving poverty levels in the slums near Mankundu and in the areas outside of Kolkata. So one of their major projects is education, which is mainly what I was involved in. This is a photo that I took of some children lining up at the end of the school day at the English medium school run by the NGO. The English medium schools are actually private schools. This is for wealthier students, but it's a fundraiser for their other projects in the slums. And so where I spent most of my time was actually working in the schools in the slums at places like this, the tutorials, which are before and after school programs that give outside tutoring to the kids who can't afford to have private tutors, which is really what's necessary for students in India to keep up in school. So this program they had a couple different tutorials. Some of them I visited, some of them I actually spent time working in, teaching English and helping students with reading and writing. And these projects are aimed at trying to get these kids out of poverty and give them the opportunity to move away from these areas and pursue careers. Human Wave is also involved with microfinance, and this is an annual gathering of a bunch of local women where they give out awards to those who have saved the most money from the NGO throughout the year. They earn things like electric kettles and plates for saving money. So it was a lot of fun. And this is just a small sample of many women. There were somewhere around 2,000 women in this program in the local area. So I spent most of my time at the Lalkuti tutorial, where it's located in one of the slums right near Mankundu. And I was teaching English, and this is a photo of a project that was actually started by an American volunteer who was there a couple months before I was, to pave the schoolyard before the monsoon season hit. There was no paving in this whole slum until this project began, which means that once the monsoon rains came, everything was going to be a mud pit and the kids could no longer play outside. So this project was in the works while I was there, and here's a photo of it finished with me and some of the students and teachers. So I also spent some time working in the office helping with the microfinance program. I was mostly doing bookkeeping and office work, but it was a really great exposure to how those programs actually work and the logistics of them, which I hadn't really had any exposure to before that. So my research was focused on comparing these different informal settlements and looking for the similarities and differences between them and how those relate to the NGO's work in the area. So this is a map that I created showing the railroad lines that runs north from Kolkata up to Darjeeling. And Mankundu, the town where the NGO is based, is right near the north end of this map at the top. And these are some of their different projects, which, as you can see from the map, are all located directly adjacent to the railroad lines, which is because these informal settlements, the people in them don't actually own the land. They're residing on railroad-owned property. It's mostly refugees from Bangladesh and some from other parts of India, and they settle in these areas where this land is unoccupied, but they don't actually own the spaces where they're living. So that's why these all end up being situated right along the railroad, which I found very interesting. Also, moving from north to south is the chronological order that the NGO started working in these places. And when I was visiting the different settlements, it was very easy to see, just by walking through them, how long the NGO had been working there and doing their community development projects. The two furthest to the north were much more developed in terms they had sewage, most of them had water lines, electricity, the houses were made of concrete and brick. They were much more permanent settlements. And then the ones to the south, the two lower ones are much newer projects started within the past 5 years or so, and those ones, they're just trying to get electricity, they're trying to pave things. There are a few selected water pumps here and there, but they're much less developed, and it was really clear walking through them the impact that the NGO had on these areas. And this is just illustrating the proximity to the railroads of these settlements. This is very typical as you're riding the train around this area and the other parts of India that I visited, that they're all right along the railroads for the same reason that that land is unoccupied. But since they don't actually own the land, these people are sometimes reluctant to put a lot of time and money into developing these areas, because in theory they could be kicked out at any time if the railroad decided to expand, build a new line next to their old one. They could easily come through and kick these people out. So some of the things I took away from this program are cultural experiences. What really drew me to it in the first place was the opportunity to be immersed in another culture that I wasn't very familiar with at all. I really was drawn to this fellowship program over a traditional study abroad for this reason, that I got to live with a host family and I got to learn about the actual day-to-day lives of the local people and be involved in work at the local scale, not just see all the touristy sites. So one of the first days there, I was invited to this wedding by a friend of someone who worked in the NGO office. I still don't know who the bride and groom are, but they're the two in the middle. And those are some of the other volunteers who are from Germany who were working with the NGO while I was there. And here's another photo with some of the volunteers and our host brother on the left. And I made a lot of close ties with my host family and the other volunteers, and I would love to go back and visit them, and I'm definitely keeping in touch. We've been corresponding throughout the summer, and I hope to continue that also. And I just want to end by giving a big thank you to the donor and to the program, to Janelle, for all of your help. This never would have been possible without the financial and logistical support of the program and the donor. And it was an amazing opportunity that I'll definitely take with me into my future career. Are there any questions on my work or anything I said?
What was your most memorable experience?
The most memorable. I think the one that really stands out to me was when I was going through the Adashanagor tutorial, one of my first days there. The NGO director was leading me around and showing me the place, and he introduced me to this young man who was probably in his early 20s. And Adashanagor was the first project that the NGO was working on, so it was started about 17 years ago. So this man now was one of the first students of the tutorials, and his family before him had all been day laborers traveling from place to place to find money. But because of the NGO's work and the education that he received from the tutorials, he had been able to get a degree in pharmacy and was now commuting back and forth to Kolkata every day on the train. And he was hoping to move his family out of the slum and start a new life for himself. So that was a really great story that stuck with me.
For a terrific presentation. I had a question about the immigrants or the people living in informal settlements. You said most of them were they're refugees from Bangladesh. Is that typical of people throughout the city in informal settlements, or is it more just the people that were settled in the areas that you happen to look at?
I think it's a mix. It was especially concentrated where I was because I was in West Bengal, which Bangladesh used to be called East Bengal before they split. And so in the region where I was, there were a lot of refugees because it was so close geographically. I don't know if that's common of all of West Bengal. I know near Kolkata, there's a much more diversified population in the informal settlements because it's such a big city. It draws a lot of people from the rural areas who are looking for jobs and money. But where I was especially, it was very concentrated. So I guess I can't speak to all of India, but yeah.
So did you ever feel unsafe in the slums? Because even though I was in India, I never got to go to one, so I just had the stereotypes in my mind.
Yeah, I actually didn't, and I think it was partly because the areas I were working were fairly small. Like most of the slums near me had 50 to 70 families in them, and also the NGO was fairly well established there, so they were used to foreign volunteers coming in and out and teaching, and we often would walk to and from work with some of the other local teachers. So I never felt uncomfortable. They were mostly really welcoming. They loved stopping by and asking us how we liked the food and commenting on our outfits and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. So our next speaker is Talia Rathman. She's a junior intending to double major in women's studies and history. Talia interned with Guria in Varanasi. Guria is an NGO that fights the sexual exploitation of women and girls with a focus on forced prostitution and human trafficking. Her research focused on the efficacy of Guria and how employees work with second-generation prostitution victims. Sorry, guys.
I'm Talia, and like Janelle said, I am a junior majoring in women's studies and history. And again, I just want to thank Janelle and the Institute and the anonymous donor for this incredible opportunity. It was completely life-changing and has totally affected my life since I've been back as well, and my future career plans. So I'm just really grateful to that, and I couldn't have found the NGO or developed my research project without all of Janelle's help and like constant check-ins while we were in India. So I'm really grateful to that. So I worked for GRIA, which was an NGO fighting sex trafficking and the general sexual exploitation of women in India. And Varanasi is located in Uttar Pradesh, kind of in the northeast a little bit. And I was working, Ajit Ji, who's that man right there, started this NGO when he was about 17 and adopted 3 kids who he realized were children of people who were trafficked. And through that, 25 years later, has this NGO, which does so many different things, including rescue operations on the Indo-Nepal border for forced laborers and sex workers, fights the injustice of the legal system by providing legal aid to survivors, demands the prosecution of human traffickers, empowers women in rural villages, conducts police sensitization programs, and provides informal education centers for the children of sex workers, which is where I was mainly working, and also designs staff awareness and prevention workshops for at-risk communities, participates in rallies and protests and lobbies for its programs through government advocacy. So they're doing a lot of different things with a pretty small team. So I was so impressed and just humbled the entire time I was working there. So like I said, I was working mainly in the centers for second generation prostitute victims, which were located in the red light districts. And this is because it's actually pretty dangerous for the children there to leave that area due to their caste, class, and the ostracization that comes with that. And in the top right-hand corner is a picture of kids who they put on like a mime show since they didn't speak English mostly. And it was about human trafficking in their own community, and there's just no way to feign this. They definitely knew what was going on. And through the center, which was a non-informal education center, so after school they would come there, and on a very basic level, it's to definitely keep these kids off the streets because it is a dangerous area. But on a deeper level, even though these informal programs might seem like they would have dance parties or do meditation throughout the day, learning English through picture books, learning skills like cutting hair or other creative art projects. Slowly and over time, which is a lot of what my research focused on, these children's mindsets were changed, and actually I couldn't have these specific results, but most of the kids since this program's been going on for 25 years at this specific location, most of the kids are are not working in sex trafficking like their parents are, which is pretty amazing because, like someone else mentioned before, it is really difficult to make an impact, and I definitely felt that in the 7 weeks I was working for GRIA. So it's amazing that they've done this over the 25-year span. So I found that through my research, I was focusing on a few things, and one of the specific things I looked at was there are a few children in the center who had disabilities, and because these children were so inclusive and had so much vibrance to them, even though they were, a lot of them, extremely impoverished from, not being able to have like basic clothing to not having proper treatment to healthcare issues, but they always showed up with smiling faces and wanted to learn everything they could. And I was really impressed. I mean, the efficacy of like things, them learning in beauty workshops and cutting hair was so impressive because through these basic skills, they actually had a way out. And so I found that through all of my observation that the programs they had implemented were really working. And one of my limitations was that because of the university and because of their confidentiality. I wasn't able to interview the subjects, and also a language barrier definitely prevented this because only other interns and a few of the teachers had broken or relatively good English, but you could see that my boss would tell me that, outside the center, or when they first came in, these kids were, stealing things and fighting each other a lot. And I found that, for example, like when they first came in at the beginning of the day, they were extremely rowdy with one another, but after like a meditation session, they were all calm. I felt completely comfortable leaving like my personal belongings around, and that they would be returned to me by the end of the day. And another thing that GRIA helps them do is actually sponsors them to be in school, and for some of these kids provides like the one meal they have during the day. So this is another big part of it, and clearly through a program like giving children food, afterwards they were always definitely more calm, and this was helping them a lot. This is a picture again of a wedding I was able to attend, and my personal experience of living with a homestay family and being able to participate in activities like this was really life-changing for me. So this is a picture of like the meditation program that I was talking about, and a lot of times because of the heat, these kids would start out and they're listening because a lot of it was visualized meditation, and by the end they were all lying down and basically asleep. And in the right-hand corner are tickets that these kids made for their mime show, which was about human trafficking. And I think through that, like one of the things I helped with in the office was reaching out to art therapists who could assess their work, because it's difficult to assess what's going on outside the center for them at home. And we were communicating with art therapists in the U.S. and in Europe, and hopefully they'll be able to have somebody come in and contribute to that. And this is also a picture of us looking at different picture books and trying to like teach them basic English words such as foods that will help them in their communities. Another project I was put on was during my time there was GRIA started helping a girl who was 3 years old who was raped and mutilated pretty badly and was actually denied access to a number of hospitals in the area. And so I helped write up an English report on what was happening, and we were passing out flyers to people throughout the city. And this was the protest that was going on for a couple days, actually just to ask the police to file a charge against the perpetrator in the first place, that this event had even happened. What was really impactful for me was also living in the city of Varanasi, which is one of the holiest cities in India. And in the top right-hand corner is a picture of the burning ghats. And a part of this experience that I didn't expect was to come in contact with death so often, because people who were religious came here and their bodies were burned very openly, and it was common to pass by this because it was right on the ghats, which is the central part where people are mostly in the city. People bathe in the water there, which is considered holy, and perform a lot of religious activities. So to have death so present when here it's very, very hidden from our lives was very eye-opening for me. Another aspect of living in Varanasi, after I lived there, I traveled quite a bit, and it definitely was, without a doubt, the most traffic-heavy and polluted city. So it made traveling afterwards a little bit easier for me, but I think this was a big challenge for me just because that's not how our lives are here, and I think I felt a little bit powerless in helping to change that, so I think that was definitely one of my struggles there. But the city is also very beautiful, and people have wonderful lives there, so I loved living there, and I met so many, again, like I loved the independence of this program. I got to know so many local people, and I'm in touch with all of the friends I made, which is really exciting. And these are more pictures of Varanasi, and a religious ceremony that goes on every night, which I think that they can. And these are some of my homestay family in the left-hand corner, and in the right-hand corner, where I was very, very close with them, and they really came to liking Uno, which I brought for them. And in the middle is a picture of me on the bike, which I rode for 2 hours each day in 120-degree heat, so that was definitely a lesson in patience and and just learning to cope with external environments that could be really challenging. And also, one of the impetuses for me actually becoming for applying for this was that I was in a class my freshman year about India and women, and I met someone here who's from there, and I was able to visit. She's in the right-hand bottom corner. I was able to visit her and her family there, which was really exciting to just expand my network here and be able to see someone there in India. And after I finished my internship, I actually decided to travel by myself after being accustomed to life there for 2 months. And people thought I was, from here, kind of thought I was crazy for doing that, and even there, but I really did find that it's completely possible. I definitely felt like I had to be vigilant, but at the same time, this really opened my eyes to what local people and life there was really like. And food's a big part of India, so I thought I'd give you guys a tidbit on that. And these were some of my travel experiences. And one of my most memorable experiences was when I was traveling, I met a man who invited me and some of my friends who I was with to see his local village. And they were living in pretty impoverished conditions, and actually there were some burnt items outside of this little hut that they were living in, and I asked about it. They hadn't said anything about it, and actually that someone had burnt down their hut, and my friend and I decided to buy them this tarp which is the main covering of their house. They use bamboo sticks otherwise to create their house, and between us it was maybe $50 US, and to them it was like a house for the next 15 years. So that was just really humbling that we could be able to do that for somebody. And there were also so many festivals and exciting things constantly going on in India, and it was a really exciting opportunity to be a part of that. And I also have a little, I don't know how to open this, but sorry. I have a little video to show just of some of the kids who I was working with and just how exciting it was, how happy they were, even in the conditions that they were in. And I think that was, huh? Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yeah. Oh. This is the first time it had rained during the monsoon season.
That's how they feel about rain.
And they love dancing and singing, so that was a really great atmosphere to be around. Thank you. Does anyone have questions?
You said that this has changed your life since you've gotten back. How has it changed your life?
I think it's changed my life just coming back to the environment, which I was accustomed to, and sort of questioning just different values in the U.S., like how we place a lot of value on material items, and how I was around people who were just very happy with almost nothing. And I think just continuing to be open to the ways people live life, which aren't necessarily similar to us.
There's hope for these children to move beyond their situation through education. Is there evidence of that they'll improve their lives?
Yeah, so I mean, the fact that there are statistics showing that they aren't in the sex trafficking trade anymore is extremely significant. However, I think that most of these kids aren't furthering their education in terms of going to college, and that's definitely the next step, because they're only getting maybe a very basic level of education, not necessarily learning to speak English, which is like a pretty important skill there.
So you mentioned, like, prior to going on this trip, you mentioned that this, like, changed your career ambitions, and I was just wondering, like, how this impacted what you want to do in the future, and if you want to do, like, international work or do something specifically in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so before I had been doing work in terms of like sexual assault on our campus and was interested in working for an NGO, but definitely after this opportunity, I know I don't know if I hope it's international, but I don't know if it'll be in sex trafficking or sexual assault or sexual violence in war zones, but I know I definitely want to focus my career path in this subject area, and working for GRIA and Ajiji, my boss specifically, really helps solidify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Talia. Our next speaker is Morgan Fitzgerald. She's a sophomore planning a double major in international studies and environmental science. Morgan interned with Navdanya, located outside of Dehradun. Navdanya promotes biodiversity conservation, organic farming, the rights of farmers, and the process of seed saving. Morgan's project focused on Navdanya as an organization and considered how it goes about fulfilling its mission, the extent to which it's successful, and other strategies it may employ.
Hello. So as she mentioned, I'm Morgan. I am a sophomore here at Michigan, obviously. And my major going in, I always knew I wanted to do international because I had a strong love for India, but I wasn't really sure besides that. I thought environmental sciences, and then I went to this farm, and I learned I love the environment, but I could not do it as a career. So I'm kind of changing that up a little bit. I might be doing public health. I was actually kind of inspired by that because I got very sick very often in India. And I was most curious about the foods they gave me when I was sick and what effect they had on my body. So I learned that my passions actually lie in food sciences and public health. This is a picture of me. My mom snagged before I got on the plane because she was crying and sad. But where my India obsession began is actually with my best friend, Divya. She's the one on the left. She's from Punjab in India, and from freshman year in high school, always brought me to a bunch of different family events, from weddings to graduations to anything in between. And from there, I got obsessed with the culture. Actually, my senior year in high school was part of our ethnic fair Bollywood dance. There's me in the front doing the pointing thing. But from then on, I still do Bollywood dance now, and I'm just obsessed. So then from India, to India from America, I was on a farm, and it's in Dehradun, which is the northeastern part of India. There on the farm, they work a lot against Monsanto, which is an American-based company. It's very big in the environmental world right now to talk about. Monsanto is a company that works with GMOs and genetically modified organisms. And they're in India right now. They are a big problem because they are trying to get the Indian farmers that do traditional farming work, not with GMOs, and they're used to their seeds reproducing. And so now what Monsanto does is they're giving them their seeds, which is good in a sense, but then they're very manipulative almost about it, not to use harsh words, but and they are they are suggesting to these farmers to use these seeds that don't reproduce, and so these farmers don't have seeds the next year, and there's actually a huge epidemic of farmer suicide occurring in India because of it. So Navdanya, the farm, works against that, and they actually work with over 1 million farmers in India right now, which is surprisingly only 3% of farmers. But they work on seed conservation as well in order to promote organics, to promote the seeds and not the GMOs. That's me in front of one of the mango trees on the farm. It was my first time in India. I actually sat in a mango tree, which was kind of a surreal experience. And this is our gazebo on the farm, where we had all the meetings. We did meditation there on International Yoga Day, so that was kind of fun. But besides that. And then, so some overview of my work. It was an organizational observational study. Because going in, I'm from Chicago, I don't know farms. I'm from a big city, so I didn't know what to expect at all. So I went in thinking I'll just observe everything, fully immerse myself to my best ability, and that's what I did. So I worked alongside the farmers, I played volleyball with them, I ate with them, I did anything I could do, from morning chores like cleaning out the toilets, which was gross, but it's okay, to just sitting with them and talking about their lives. So here's a picture of one of the work we did. It was actually right before I left, so I didn't get to plant the seeds, but we were flooding the rice farms for the rice paddies in the coming season, right before monsoon season. And then here's me watching the volleyball games he played, because at first it was very intimidating because they were all really good. But eventually, towards the end, I did play volleyball. So my research specifically focused on Dandanya as an organization and how it goes about fulfilling its mission, and how successful it was, because I was very surprised. Going there, it's supposed to be a women-led movement as well, helping empower women farmers throughout India, but I got to the farm and there were 3 total women farmers, which really shocked me. So that's an area I focused on especially, and I also focused on how it could implement other policies and other things to help it improve. As I said before, there weren't a lot of women on a women empowerment farm, which seemed very counterintuitive. And as well, there were tons of volunteers from all over the world, which was cool for me, because I felt like I had the world in a small area of farming, but it was not as good for our productivity because there were, I think, like 36 interns at one point, and it's the summertime, it's not a lot of work to do. So most of the time we had too much time to like play Twister or make pyramids or things like that, and not as much work as we probably could have done. There could have been more productivity. In the upper left-hand corner, though, was one of the really cool jobs that I got to do. We like smacked these stalks to get the spinach seeds off, which was really fun. And actually I have a video of us doing it. The girl, like, well, the girl in the hat, her husband was from Ecuador, so like they're teaching us something about Ecuadorian farming, which was kind of fun. So as I said before, it's an organizational observational study. So I became a part of the farm, and I learned through my research afterwards that in India, for farming, the women are seen as like just household work is what they do, while men are seen as the breadwinners. And part of that is because the men are worried that when women go outside of their household, they're worried about them being taken advantage of, not getting proper care, and it's just like a big issue for like their personal safety, as well as the farm and like the effectiveness of the interns. Obviously, we weren't as effective as we could have been. So at first, I thought we could approach it from like a financial standpoint, maybe like limit the amount of interns. So like, that's not financial, but you could limit the amount of interns so that there would be less people and like, more work to do. But from a financial standpoint, the farm actually needed the money from the interns because we paid to stay there. And in order to keep the farm going and all the projects that they had, they really needed that support system. So that was just not an option. But something else the farm does is it builds and fills seed banks all throughout India. So I thought it'd be really cool for the interns to go out of the farm, not just stay in the bubble, and help create and fill those seed banks as well, get the hands-on experience, as well as go out of the farm and work with other women farmers through their program called Diverse Women for Diversity. As well as I was on their website and I realized there are a lot of grammar mistakes, so something as simple as fixing the website for English, just grammar mistakes and anything else they could do would be effective in their implementing their policies and getting more stability and support from other people. As well as there were tons of interns, they were coming and leaving all throughout the time there, from like people that were there for 3 days to people that had been there for 6 years. But there wasn't a big forum for the interns there to share their research afterwards, or even their like just their interests and like catching up, besides Facebook, but not everybody has Facebook, so it wasn't as effective. So to create a forum for all the interns to share their research would be a very good idea as well as advertising strategies, because as I said before, they work with over 1 million farmers in India, but it's still only 3%. So to increase that number through advertising would be helpful as well. And most of the interns are from Western areas, so advertising is like a very big thing that we know about. And near many of the interns that I was with, I actually made like the coolest friends. They were from like Paris and Germany and Switzerland and a little island called New Caledonia, and like it was the coolest thing. And so discussion on my findings, I thought it would be very important to get the husbands more involved in the farm. So for the women, it could be the farm was an extension of the home instead of just seeing it as something separate where they worked. That way the husbands wouldn't feel like their wives or their children or anybody else would feel taken advantage of. As well as to keep the interns busy, it's really important that we are kept busy because we'll have a more enriching experience spreading the word of our work, like I'm doing now, and to other people, which will help me get more interns in the future, as well as we're more willing to work harder because we'll feel more personally just satisfied, as well as it's free advertising by word of mouth, so that's also helpful for the farm. Obviously, it wasn't very hard to keep me happy, though, when I was there. All I did was my chai tea. It was the best thing ever, and I had so many every single day, so that was great. I also got to have the opportunity of traveling every weekend with everybody in the farm, and it was an amazing experience. And I have a video from like I actually cried after this. Fun fact. But it was such an enriching experience. And this was in Rishikesh, and they're doing this in the northeastern part, which is right along the Ganges River. Like Talia had mentioned, it's a very holy river, and that's where it is now. I was in Varanasi, which at the Ganga, and it's called an arti, the ceremony that they perform, and it happens every night all along the river, and it's this beautiful, beautiful ceremony to the river goddess, and I did cry, which is embarrassing, but awesome. And then some more personal experiences, like I know it's cheesy, but I can't even begin to explain how it affected me. I was just such change as a person, and to be able to go and like have my dream come true, finally be able to go to India was incredible. Here I was in Varanasi actually visiting Talia. And I thought it was cool because I got to go and visit Italy afterwards, and Venice, and it was very cool because in Venice they also have the gondolas, so it's kind of like very similar. It was a little bit of a throwback there. And here's me in my first rickshaw ride. It was in my first 3 days in India. I was a little terrified, but it's okay. I survived, obviously. And here, me and some of my friends along the Ganga, we got to cleanse our souls in it and go in, and which was just absolutely like enriching. And then here's a picture from the arti, the ceremony in Rishikesh especially. I actually became obsessed with this, so everywhere I went in India, if I was by the Ganga, I got to go to an arti. I dragged a few friends with me. I got to go to 3, which is the coolest thing ever, because I heard from some people they didn't even get to go to 1 in their lifetime, even if they lived in India. So I felt very honored by that. Here's the one in Varanasi as well, which is a super long experience compared to the other ones. But it was cool because they had fire and like feather things that they flew everywhere, and it was very different. And here's a burning ghat, like Talia also explained, which was kind of, excuse the angle, I was trying to be artistic, but but it was cool because you, like Talia had said, you don't experience death in your face as much here in America, so to be able to go there and see the religious and spiritual part of it was absolutely incredible. And here's me in an auto rickshaw with 5 friends, and I'm very proud of this moment because we got the whole entire cart for 5 rupees total, which is like insane because usually they'll charge one person for 150 when you're a foreigner. So we were very proud of ourselves. And I was actually here for 4th of July, and most of us were Americans, so we got to celebrate 4th of July together, which was fun. And then also in India, a big cultural shock for me was people love to take pictures with you because you're a foreigner, which is very obvious. And so my favorite story to tell is one man had come up to me when I was in a market, and he like folded my arms up and put his baby in my arms, and suddenly his whole family was behind me, and didn't ask. It just happened. So this happened a lot. You got used to it. You kind of felt like a star. It was fun sometimes. So here's one, and here's another one in another city with more people, and here's none at Taj Mahal. We actually had like a line with us, like a little queue. It took a long time to get through. But so I just want to say, especially to the donor, I know we've all said it before, but really these are such enriching and amazing experiences. So I want to say dhanyavad, shukriya, and thank you to the donor and Janelle especially. I could not have done this without their help and support, and I'm so glad I was able to. So yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any questions at all? Yeah.
What was the favorite city that you visited?
Rishikesh, by far. It's actually the holy city. It's one of the holy cities on the river. It's considered the yoga capital of the universe. I have no idea how they decided that one, but it is. And it was so cool to go there because they both had an international section of the city as well as like the Indian part. So to go to one place, you saw like 16 white people, which was insane because like that, I hadn't seen that many white people in a long time. And then also it was cool because many people from all over India come to go to the Ganga, and so to see people from all over India like and experience all different cultures in one place was really, really cool.
So I know you said that there was lots of other international people and interns, but how many people that were actually locals that were working on the farm that you got to meet and work with?
It was cool because they were not only international, but they were all over India too. So some of my friends were from Delhi, some were from Bangalore. I didn't say that right. Bangladesh. I just combined things there. I don't really know what happened. But then also there were a few like local farmers. There were about 15 that actually worked on the farm the entire year for like 20 or so years. But the volunteers themselves were from either all over India or from all over the world. Yeah. All All right, thank you.
Sorry, so we're having issues with Thank you so much, Morgan. Our next speaker is Jacob Anderson. He's a junior studying cell molecular biology. Jacob plans to pursue medical school after graduation and has an interest in international and urban health disparities. Jacob interned at Vivekananda Memorial Hospital, which works to provide cost-effective healthcare services to rural and or marginalized populations. Jacob had the opportunity to not only shadow doctors, but work with administrators on a public health campaign and annual reporting.
All right. Hi. So my name's Jacob. So I guess you've heard a lot about the program, so I won't get into that. I'll just start. So basically, during this presentation, I just want to go over some stuff I did. Why I chose the program, I think, is my most important thing I want to talk about. A little bit about the NGO and the work I did and some things I learned. So these are some pictures. I didn't have like that many friends my age, so I just hung out with cows and stuff. And here's a picture of me. I went to a roti bar, and I told my mother, I went to a roti bar, and she's like, where'd you go? And I told her it was just like a wheat tortilla. She was concerned it was alcohol. That was the joke, sorry. So who am I? I guess this is like the boring stuff. So I'm a cell and molecular biology major. I love cells. I'm made of them. So minor. So I'm thinking about doing a minor. Not sure what. I would like to be a physician. I'm not sure in what capacity, whether or not I want to have research involved or not. Maybe an MPH, I'm not sure. And the biggest things I am involved in on campus are my MLC Health Science Scholars Program. And there's a picture of me with my mentees from 1 year. And I'm doing the duck face and the sorority squad. So why SISA? So there's a lot of reasons I chose this program. So I guess one of the reasons was like an interest in South Asian culture. So the first time I realized that there was other religions other than Catholicism, it was my friend. He was Hyderabadi Muslim, and he said something, and he was like, I don't know why white people always put soap on their hands before they put them in the sink. I wasn't sure who he was talking about, and I looked around the room, and he was talking about all of us. So he was talking about, and that's when I realized, like, I'm white, and I have this identity, and I didn't really know about that. And that's because, so I grew up in Ann Arbor when my dad was finishing law school, and then I went to the west side of Cleveland, which, if you're not familiar, Cleveland's extremely segregated, and where I live, 97% of the people are white, and I was self-segregated as well, so I went to a Catholic school, so when I looked to my left, when I looked to my right, there's a 97% chance someone was going to be white, and like almost 100% chance they were going to be Catholic. And same thing in high school, except for I even removed the gender aspect, so I went to an all-male Catholic high school, and yeah, so we had similar experiences, right? We had similar socioeconomic statuses, similar identities that we carried. And while all of our schemas about the world, I think, weren't the same, I think that we were limited. Like, we had grown up similarly, we had the similar parables told to us at school, and I was unsure of the cost of that as a scientist, as someone who wants to be a good physician where I can meet people where they're at and not where I am now. And so this is a picture of Cleveland. So I live over here, and the dots are the races. So yeah, that's why I chose this program. So homogeneity was what I was trying to escape. Just for 7 weeks, I wanted to be the only one in the room that looked like me. I wanted to experience that. I wanted to experience where when I think back to my childhood, the person to my left isn't thinking about a parable they heard from their mother. Maybe they're hearing about they're thinking about like Shiva or something different, I guess. So I wrote this. So I looked back at my application because I think that's always funny, right? When you look back at your application to see what you wrote to try to get in, I guess. I don't know. So I said, needless to say, throughout my life, I have been surrounded by much of the same ethnicities, same socioeconomic statuses, same religion, frequently the same core values. In terms of my childhood, I was often correct. correct in the way that my schemas and expectations for social settings in nearly every context were correct. I never had to confront the little assumptions I made about the world, nor did I have my core values challenged. And so when I came to Michigan, I started encountering a lot of literature that said, maybe there's a deficit of that, maybe there's some problem with that. And so I read this quote by this great author. He said, "When we place ourselves in an environment in which many of our mental models do not work, we have a greater capacity to build new models, to expand our understanding, and our capacity to create." So that's what SISA was for me. And I think I accomplished it. I don't know if I'll convey that or not, but hopefully. So as soon as I heard about it, I thought this was great. And so I sent out an email like tomorrow last year. And I was super excited. And 5 months later, I heard back. And I was accepted. And I was so excited. I couldn't hold back the formality when I emailed my professor with lots of exclamation points. I even went with the bold font. And so yeah, here I am, this kid who spent all his life between Ann Arbor and Cleveland. And then I went to Mysore. I ended up a little bit more disheveled after I got off the plane, I guess. And this is where I ended up. So I ended up at Vivekananda Memorial Hospital. So this is a part of a larger organization called Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement. So they're targeting 3 things really, like economic empowerment, education, and health. And so I can't really speak to all those aspects. I can speak mostly to health, I guess. So I lived in this hospital and I worked there for 7 weeks in varying capacities. So I thought I would be there doing whatever they really needed me to do. So I came with a service aspect in mind, and I just came, willing to serve. And yeah, people I guess are interested where you lived, and so this is where I was. So if you went up here and you took a left, that was my room. This is what my room looked like. Putting this together, I realized I didn't make that bed before I left, so I feel super bad. And this was south of Bangalore, so south of where Sam was. And so here's some projects I did. So I did a brochure. Funny story, I guess. So they thought they saw my resume and they saw College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, and they said he must be good at literature. And I tried to convey to them I only know a third of that stuff. But whatever, it worked out, I guess. So I did these things, and the informal things were super fun too. So I got to work, see a lot of tribals, which is a really interesting thing. So I didn't really anticipate India having like a tribal population, but they do. So there were some tribes who were really known for hairy babies hairy babies and honey making tribes that made really good honey, I guess. And lots of medical exposure. I saw a birth, which was crazy. Seeing a birth is like I don't know. And then I had a lot of exposure to Ayurveda medicine, which is really cool. I don't know if I'll ever value that until I get into like medical school, or God willing. Then I think I'll understand why that was more valuable. So it focused a lot more on the disposition of the patient rather than like their actual infections, which is so different, I guess, from allopathic medicine. I don't know how much experience. Different healthcare system. I went on grand rounds, which was pretty novel, and 2 journal clubs. So this is the first thing I did. They came and they told me to do a brochure. I said, "Are you sure you want me to do that? I don't really know what I'm doing." They said, "Yeah," and so I did it. And so I guess it was a cool project though, because I got to learn a lot about the NGO like really rapidly. So I would just sit with people for hours, and we would just talk about what they were doing, what this NGO is doing in the community and in the hospital. And this one was like a huge thing. They're like, "Hey, we want you to write the annual report for the last year." And I said, "I've only been here for 3 days." But hey, it ended up working out. So this one took like a lot of work on my own. So I would just go to these different departments, and I would stand there, and I would just talk to them, or I'd go through their files, and I'd figure out what that department was doing, and I would write up a summary of what they did in the past year. I guess part of my contribution to the NGO came here because when I would go to different departments, I would ask how many surgeries happened, and some people said like 500, some people said like 3. So there was definitely differences in documentation between the departments, which is something we addressed. I've also never designed a calendar before, so they asked me to do that, and I said okay. And so I worked with the program Adobe InDesign. It was free for 14 days, so I cranked this out in 14 days. And then we started distributing it. So this is aimed towards a population with lots of cerebral palsy, right? So that's like a posture, it presents issues for posture, and so there's certain ways that you can exercise and hold and feed your baby that will give them a wider range of mobility, I guess. And so this is what we made, and hopefully we'll distribute it and translate it. So I guess this is where my experience as like a researcher, I think, helped the most. So we went over this this field-based study they want to do, where they're going out and they're taking tablets and they're meeting every mother in like this huge taluk, which is like this group, which is like I don't know, it's like a city basically, and or no, it's like what's Wash? It's like a county, and they would go out and they find everyone who's pregnant. They would document it, and so I went basically through the study with them, and I said, these are some things we need to be concerned about, because I think they have like an equivalent to an IRB where they're going to be questioned about, the malfeasance and like the issues with the medical ethics, and yeah, so that was really fun. I got to see what a ground-based study would look like in India. Proposals. So they so the hospital has a lot of needs, right? So they're serving this underserved population, and they are giving out a lot of medications and surgeries free of cost. And so a lot of the things they can't, because they're giving them out free of cost, they don't have disposable income to replace things that are old. So they're working with like laparoscopic instruments that are 10 years old, which you'll never have a surgery with 10-year-old laparoscopic instruments in the U.S. And so I was just helping them procure those by writing up this proposal, and so VMH is really big on like, this is a tribal situation, and being tribal, your geography shouldn't dictate what healthcare you get, which I was totally on board with. So I went through and I said, this is the standard of care that's being provided in urban centers. Let's provide this in a rural setting. And so that's what that proposal was. I did another one on getting funding for diabetes medication, specifically like insulin and cardiovascular medication. And also, like 2 days before I left, their ultrasound machine broke, so they said, can you start that? And so while I was packing, I would write sentences, and I had like half the proposal done. So I'm like corresponding back and forth, so we can finish that one up. Yeah, so those are the things I did like in particular, right? With very specific, very hard things. But I guess right, we've all talked about. I think most of what we learned, I think, was outside of what like our research was. I guess like we learned, personal skills, and so I guess I'm gonna try to convey that, right? So we I think we're always enamored with like the colors of India, I guess. So this is like all the pictures I'm gonna show you are pictures of nothing. They're just pictures of like outside, and it's just so beautiful. I think like all the saris and stuff, drying the flowers, and like same here, just a lot of just beautiful scenery, I think. Yeah, and I met a lot of great people. I tried on clothes. I got to eat out of a leaf, which was a good meal, I guess. I also went to a wedding. I don't know the groom's names. I don't know if you guys knew your grooms. Okay, yeah, none of us did. So, yeah, okay. And so this is, I guess, so I wanted to convey to you, so I guess I wanted to, this whole thing was about concepts and schemas and like figuring out where I could be wrong. And so this is, I think, one of the funnier examples. So I don't know if you went to the old Michigan Stadium before it was renovated. So the male bathrooms would have these things that are called troughs. So they'd have this running wall, and you would urinate on the wall, and you would just walk out. So this is like a quick way. It's just running, it's just running, it's just running. And so in India, and the two problems with this, right, are that the water's splattering, so you don't want to get it on your clothes, your shoes. And you're wasting a lot of water, right? So that was, I think, an issue why they replaced it. And so I went to India, and I saw this wall in the bottom. And I couldn't decipher the difference, but then I realized, oh, they solved the two issues. They you press the button and the water comes down. It's not always running. And you can stand up on a stool so you don't get, splashed. And yeah, and then but I realized this is kind of close to the door, and so I went somewhere else and I went to the bathroom. And then I later talked to someone, and they said that's actually where they wash clothes. So and so that would have been an issue. And so I always, when I talk to people about that, I guess I say it's like somebody going in and trying to pee on your washing machine. So so I was wrong, right? I guess is what I'm trying to get to. Or like my schema is about when I saw this, I thought of it as a potential like what I thought it's used for was something it wasn't, and that was because of my past, my history, and the way I was raised. And so that's something I experienced in India where I was wrong. And so this I just really wanted to share really quickly. So I wrote this when I got back, actually like just a couple of weeks ago. So as an RA this year, I've already felt the impact of my time in India when I interact with my residents. I don't feel required to interact or implicitly evaluate them based on the standards of my culture and upbringing, but on how they wish to be viewed. I can only hope this forges ties between us as people, uninterrupted by our own expectations of others. Because for all the infinite ways life can be organized, we as people resemble each other much more than we are different. While not everyone in India might use utensils, they do have a common place for eating. While their toilets may be different, many have toilets. We have families, we have friends, we have hospitals, we eat at similar times, we have work weeks and weekends, we have roads, we have similar values on success and tolerance, and to me, that is amazing. I assure you it does not have to be like this. Other forms of life do not have friends or toilets, eat 3 times a day, have or live with families and friends, or have defined weekdays and weekends. And when you think about that, it becomes probable that our organization is just one type of infinite number, and to me, it is a miracle just how similar we are. Yeah, and thanks to everyone. So, Ms. Fosler, I think we all know that we couldn't have done this without you. Professor Ali is my Urdu teacher. He really pushed me to apply, and he's a great guy. Ms. Sutton wrote an application. Lucia told me a lot about her experience with VMH the previous summer, and so that helped me, I think, in applying, and everyone at VMH for dealing with a foreigner. And the donor, obviously, so I don't know if you're here secretly. I guess Sam made me realize you might be here just disguised. But the more I hear about you, the more I realize you are an interesting person and a fantastic person for donating and helping us get this experience. Thank you. If you have any questions, please. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, everyone. Can we just have one last round of applause for our fellows? They were amazing. So thank you again for sharing your amazing experiences and research with us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. You can join us in the gallery located right outside the door, and we can have some Indian food and further discussion. Did you want to say?
I just wanted to thank you all for a really set of thoughtful and fascinating presentations. Thank you very much.